Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty heavy. We're looking at a 10-step process, but this isn't a blueprint for building something. It's a blueprint for destruction. It's a framework that shows us how genocide happens. And as dark as it is, understanding this path is the only way we can ever hope to block it.
So you have to ask yourself, how does something so horrific, so unthinkable, actually happen? How does an entire society get to a point where mass murder becomes state policy? How do regular people end up committing these kinds of atrocities? It's a question that has haunted us for a long, long time.
Well, the really terrifying answer is that it doesn't just happen overnight. It's not some sudden explosion of violence. No, it's a slow, methodical, and tragically predictable process. It has clear stages and warning signs that, if you know what you're looking for, you can actually identify.
And that's really the core of what we're talking about today, the 10 stages of genocide. This framework was developed by Dr. Gregory Stanton, the founder of Genocide Watch. And his whole argument is that because genocide is a process, it can be analyzed. And if we can analyze it, if we can spot the stages, we can actually create ways to stop it.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the initial steps, which are all about division and discrimination. Then we'll move into the middle steps, where hate gets organized. After that, the brink of persecution. And finally, the crime itself and the cover-up that always follows. And along the way, we'll also talk about how to stop it.
Okay, let's get into it. The journey to genocide, believe it or not, doesn't start with weapons. It starts with words. It starts with ideas. These first 3 stages are all about laying the social groundwork and creating the divisions that make later violence even conceivable.
Stage 1 is classification. Now look, all cultures have categories. That's normal. But this is different. This is when a society creates a rigid, inescapable binary. An us versus them. You see it with German and Jew in Nazi Germany, or Hutu and Tutsi in Rwanda. It's this total elimination of any middle ground or mixed identity that creates the first dangerous crack in a society.
Next up, Stage 2, symbolization. This is when you literally put a label on those us and them categories. Now, symbols by themselves aren't the problem, but they become incredibly dangerous when you combine them with hatred and force them on a specific group. The yellow star is, of course, the most chilling example, but there are others, like the yellow scarves that people in eastern Cambodia were forced to wear by the Khmer Rouge to mark them for persecution.
And that leads right into Stage 3, discrimination. This is where prejudice gets the full force of law behind it. It's no longer just social animosity, it becomes legally enforced. Think about the Nuremberg laws that stripped Jews of their citizenship, or the 1982 law that did the exact same thing to the Rohingya people in Burma. This stage writes that us versus them mentality right into the DNA of the state.
But here's the thing. Even as this is all happening, it's not a done deal. It's not inevitable. This process, built on words and laws, can be fought. So how do you stop it?
The key at this early point is to actively push back against the division. That means promoting institutions that bring people together across ethnic or religious lines. It means legally banning hate symbols. And most importantly, it means guaranteeing full citizenship and the full protection of the law for every single person. These things build up a society's immune system against this kind of hate. All right, now we're moving into the middle stages, and this is where things really start to escalate, and fast. We're moving away from social division and into the active, organized preparation for violence. The language gets uglier, and the actions get much more serious. And now we hit a really critical, really dark turning point. Stage 4, dehumanization. This is the psychological weapon that makes mass murder possible because it helps people overcome that natural, human resistance to killing another person. The target group is talked about not as people, but as animals, as vermin, as a disease that needs to be wiped out.
And you start to hear this kind of language everywhere. Propaganda floods the airwaves, teaching the majority that society will somehow be better, cleaner, purer, once that other group is gone. It's a poison that reframes mass murder as a kind of cleansing.
Once people have been psychologically prepped, you get to Stage 5, organization. Because you have to remember, genocide is never spontaneous. It's always organized. It's a plan, usually sponsored by the state itself, which will often use militias like the Janjaweed in Darfur so they can deny they were involved. And that leads right into Stage 6, preparation. The plans get very real. Death lists are made. Victims are identified and separated from everyone else, and you start to hear euphemisms like ethnic cleansing to mask the terrifying reality of what's about to happen.
So, to stop this, you really need the world to step in. And this isn't about just words of condemnation anymore. It's about real action. Banning hate speech and shutting down the propaganda stations, slapping on arms embargoes to stop weapons from flowing in, and hitting the leaders with sanctions, denying them visas, and freezing their assets. These are the tools that can stop the momentum.
Okay, so in these next two stages, we're moving from planning to direct hostile action. This is the final descent. This is the moment right before the mass killing begins, where the victim group is completely isolated and stripped of any power to defend themselves.
Stage 7 is polarization. Extremists use propaganda to push the groups as far apart as possible. The goal here is to eliminate any and all middle ground. And crucially, they target their own moderates, the very people in their own group who might stand up and say, hey, this is wrong. Those voices are silenced, either through intimidation, arrest, or even murder.
And from there, it's a straight line to stage 8, persecution. Now the victims are being openly and systematically attacked. Their property is taken, they're forced into ghettos and concentration camps, they are deliberately starved and denied medicine. And under the official Genocide Convention, these acts themselves are already considered genocide because they are designed to destroy the group.
And now, we've reached the end of the path. The final horrifying stages where everything that's been building is finally unleashed.
Stage 9 is extermination. This is the mass killing that we legally define as genocide. But think about the word the perpetrators use, extermination. It's chilling. Because of that earlier stage of dehumanization, they don't see their victims as human. Once this begins, the only way to stop it is with massive and rapid armed intervention. And in modern genocide, systematic rape, like what we saw in Darfur, has become a horrifying tool to destroy a group both physically and genetically.
And then finally, there's stage 10, denial. This is the last stage, and it always follows a genocide. It can go on for decades. Perpetrators will literally dig up mass graves to hide what they did. They'll threaten or kill witnesses, they'll block any investigation, and very often they'll try to blame the victims for what happened. Denial is a continuation of the crime, and it's a huge warning sign that it could happen again.
So, after walking through all of that darkness, you have to ask, okay, why does this framework matter so much? It matters because knowing how this works is a form of power. Understanding the process is the absolute first step toward dismantling it.
10 stages. 10 predictable steps on a path that leads from a simple us and them to the absolute unthinkable.
And that is the most important thing to take away from this. These aren't just random, tragic events from history books. They are a pattern. They are literal warning signs. And understanding that pattern can change us from just being spectators into people who can actually help prevent these atrocities. So this framework, it gives us a map. It shows us the road. The real question then isn't about what we know, it's about what we're willing to do. Now that we can actually see the path unfolding, will we, as a global community, find the courage to stand in the way and block it?